Tonight, conflict and rising tensions between Russia and Ukraine made German Chancellor Scholz head to Moscow in a mission to avert war. Politics in South Korea campaigning for next president kicks off. The military in Myanmar committed war crimes in Karenni state. The United States requests extradition of former Honduran President Hernandez. And 2 children killed in French Pyrenees explosion. Good evening and welcome to International News Desk from our studio here at ECWA Television Africa. We begin tonight with breaking news on the crisis between Russia and Ukraine. Olaf Scholz, German Chancellor, on Tuesday heads to Moscow to meet President Vladimir Putin in a high-stakes mission to prevent war, saying he will hit home the message from the West that they are open to negotiation about Russia's security fears, but will enforce sanctions if it attacks Ukraine. Lloyd Austin, U.S. Defense Secretary, is also expected to visit Belgium, where he will meet Lithuania and Poland, NATO allies, a day after Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov held out the hope for negotiation after urging Putin to continue dialogues. In the midst of frantic diplomacy to try and avert conflict in Ukraine, the United States extended a $1 billion sovereign loan guarantee to Ukraine as the buildup of Russian troops at the country's borders weighs on its economy. He said in Kyiv on Monday before returning to Berlin, "We are ready for very far-reaching and effective sanctions in coordination with our allies." Warnings of sanctions could hit home harder coming from Germany, Russia's #1 trade partner in Europe and the biggest consumer of Russian natural gas, although that could also limit Scholz's room for maneuver. On politics in South Korea on Tuesday, campaigning for presidential election in South Korea formally began and is expected to be the tightest race in 20 years. The ruling Democratic Party's Lee Jae-myung began his campaign at the southeastern port city of Busan. According to reports, the Conservative People Power Party's Yoon Song-yeol, Lee's main rival, began his bid for office at the Seoul National Cemetery. Opinion polls propose voters are looking for a president who can address polarized politics and tackle corruption, as well as deal with rising housing prices and deepening inequality. Nevertheless, policy issues have so far been dominated by scandals and trivial controversies ranging from allegations of abuse of power to sparks over one candidate's relationship with a shaman and an anal acupuncturist. Lee and Yoon are the front runners, with the latest opinion polls giving Yoon a slight lead in a field of 14 candidates. This is the biggest elections we've seen in a while. It's very sporadic that a likely winner has yet to emerge just 3 weeks before the vote. Bae Jong-chang, a political analyst who runs the Insight K think tank, said, according to reports. As a political novice, however, Yoon has gained popularity thanks to his image as a loyal prosecutor general who steered high-profile investigations into corruption scandals engulfing aides to former President Park Geun-hye, South Korea's first female president, and current President Moon Jae-in. But increasing frustration over mainstream politics and controversy involving both candidates' families have helped boost the candidacy of Ahn Cheol-soon, a software mogul and doctor who is a minor opposition candidate. The election on March 9th will be the first to give 18-year-olds the vote. Amidst the wave of Omicron cases, people diagnosed with COVID-19 and those in quarantine will be permitted to vote after regular polling closes. On Tuesday, the country confirmed a record of 57,177 cases. Now, prominent human rights group Fortify Rights said in a new report published on Tuesday, the Myanmar military has killed civilians and used them as human shields in a sequence of mayhems in eastern Karenni state that may sum up to war crimes. Between May 2021 and January 2022, the group stated it documented attacks on churches, residential homes, camps for displaced people, and other non-military targets that took place in the state, also known as Kaya State. At least 61 civilians were killed during that time, it said. The report comes as foreign ministers from the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, prepare to meet in Cambodia with no progress in a 5-point consensus agreed with the military last April that was supposed to end the violence. Fortify Rights said it was time ASEAN give its support to a global arms embargo. Ismail Wolf, regional director at Fortify Rights, said in a statement, the Myanmar junta is murdering people with weapons obtained on the global market, and that must stop. Clear and definitive action is needed to compel the Myanmar junta to rethink its attacks on civilians. The United Nations Security Council must immediately enforce a global arms embargo on the Myanmar military, and it will be strategic and sensible for ASEAN to support it. The report from Fortify Rights is based on testimony from 31 eyewitnesses and survivors, as well as verified photo and video evidence. It comprises new details on Christmas Eve killings in Russo Township, in which at least 40 civilians, including a child and 2 Save the Children staff, were killed. A doctor who worked on the autopsies of those killed told the group that some of the bodies were so badly burned that they were impossible to autopsy, but that his team was able to confirm that 5 of the bodies were women and 1 girl under the age of 15. Some had their mouths stuffed with clothes, so we were pretty sure that these people were gagged, the doctor told Fortify Rights. Almost every skull was fractured and badly cracked in some bodies. We could gather enough evidence to say they were burned to death alive. In another case, Fortify Rights said the Myanmar army used an 18-year-old man, his uncle, and 2 other men as human shields during clashes with fighters from the Karenese People Defense Force (PDF) in Mobai Township on the border with Shan State. Still ahead on the news, the United States has asked Honduras to arrest former President Juan Orlando Hernandez for his eventual extradition to the United States. The country's Supreme Court had been notified that the U.S. Embassy had demanded the formal provisional arrest of a Honduran politician for extradition, Honduras Foreign Affairs Ministry had said via Twitter on Monday. The ministry did not identify the politician, but Honduras Vice President Salvador Nasrallah confirmed that the request named Hernandez, according to reports. On Monday, tens of police officers surrounded Hernandez's house, according to reports. Images of a document which showed a formal request for provisional arrest for the purpose of extradition to the United States of America of Juan Orlando Hernandez Alvarado were also on broadcast. Nicole Navas, a spokeswoman for the U.S. Department of Justice, declined to comment. The U.S. Department of State has not commented yet. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken last week said Hernandez was included on a list last year of people accused of corruption or undermining democracy in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. The United States is advancing transparency and accountability in Central America by making public visa restrictions against Honduras' former president Juan Orlando Hernandez on account of corrupt actions, Blinken said on Twitter on February 7th, no one is above the law. Hernandez left office on January 27th with the swearing-in of President Xiomara Castro. The same day, Hernandez was sworn in Honduras representative to the Central American Parliament. With a weak and co-opted Honduran justice system, Hondurans' hope for justice had rested for years with U.S. federal prosecutors in New York, where a string of revelations against Hernandez was closely followed back home. Rumor had circulated for months over whether Hernandez will be charged once he was no longer president, because U.S. prosecutors in New York continually implicated him in his brother's 2019 drug trafficking trial, asserting that his political rise was powered by drug profits. Hernandez has denied all charges and claims the accusations are a part of a revenge plot from the same drug lords that his government captured or extradited to the United States. His brother, former Honduran Congressman Tony Hernandez, was sentenced in March 2017 to life imprisonment in the U.S. for drug trafficking. On Monday, 2 children among at least 7 people were killed in an explosion in the village of Saint-Laurent-de-la-Salange in France. According to French Interior Minister Gerald Darmanin said, according to report, it was a historic tragedy for the region. The death toll from the blast, which also injured around 30 people, remains provisional. The explosion happened overnight at around 1:30 a.m. local time, causing a fire in a small 2-story building located on the main street, according to reports. Head of operations for the Fire and Rescue Service for the Western Pyrenees, Colonel Alexander Trani, said 1 person was missing and added that there is a strong possibility that the missing person is within what remains of the building. According to him, firefighters were evaluating whether the structure was stable enough to begin searching through the rubble for the missing person, adding the operation was very complex given the stability of the building. Trani added that another person who was seriously burned in the incident had been transported to a specialist center. He confirmed that while the fire had been put out in the early hours of the morning, a few hot spots remain as of mid-afternoon. According to the public prosecutor, Jean-Dave Caville, an investigation into the incident has been opened, who said that gas cylinders may have been the cause. The French minister in charge for public accounts, who traveled to the scene, appeared to show the burnt wreckage of the building. On behalf of the nation, I offer all my support and all my solidarity to the families and loved ones of the victims, Darmanin said on Twitter. On more stories, Pakistan, Iran to set up joint working group on border issues. The Iranian Interior Minister has said Iran and Pakistan will set up a joint working group to look after border management, including security, trade, and travel issues between the 2 countries. Speaking at the conclusion of a 1-day visit to the Pakistani capital, Islamabad, Iran's Interior Minister Ahmad Vahidi on Monday said both sides were also seeking to surge engagement on economic relations. Iran-Pakistan relations, especially in the economic field, should be stronger and broader, Vahidi said. During his visit, Vahidi met his Pakistani counterpart Sheikh Rashid Ahmed, Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan, and the country's Army Chief General Qamar Javad Bajwa. The Iranian diplomat was accompanied by Iran's ambassador to Pakistan, Mohammad Ali Husseini, commander of the Iranian border guards, Brigadier General Ahmed Ali Gozardar, and Iranian military attaché Colonel Mustafa Ganbarbo. Pakistan and Iran share a border of roughly 750 kilometers, 466 miles, located in Pakistan's southwest and Iran's southeast. The border has been the site of periodic fights, with border patrols on both sides targeted. In 2018, at least 14 Iranian security personnel, including intelligence officials belonging to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, were abducted along the border, increasing tension between the 2 countries. Armed group Jaish al-Adar, affiliated with Al-Qaeda, claimed responsibilities for those abductions. Meanwhile, 5 of those soldiers were released the same year. 4 were rescued by Pakistani security forces in 2019. In 2021, Iran said it had rescued 2 more of the soldiers. In Africa, France will likely pull out of Mali, but will still remain in the Sahel. According to Jean-Yves Le Drian, French Foreign Affairs Minister, he announced on Monday French troops will continue fighting terrorism in Sahel, but no longer in Mali after a virtual meeting with European counterparts. The leaders discussed their country's future as they fight Islamist insurgents in West Africa. Mounting tensions between French and Malian authorities triggered what French President Macron called a need for significant changes in his country's military presence. Le Drian considered conditions were no longer met for French forces to continue fighting in Mali, but he maintained France will stand alongside other Sahelian nations. France is present in the Sahel region with military Operation Barkhane and is also part of the Takuba International Task Force. On Wednesday, Sahel and France leaders will meet to further discuss a new plan. Contrary to their 2020 in-person meeting, only 3 of the 5 Sahelian presidents will be present, including Nigerian, Mauritanian and Chadian leaders will attend the meeting. Refugees protest in Tunisia against UNHCR demanding immediate evacuation. On Monday, Sudan and sub-Saharan African refugees protested in Zarzis. They complained about their marginalization and demanded their evacuation from the country. These refugees, a lot of whom were rescued during efforts to cross the Mediterranean, held a sit-in in front of the headquarters of the United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR, in the Tunisian southern port town of Zarzis. They stood still just as their lives were forced to be at a standstill. Mostly refugees from Sudan and sub-Saharan African countries, the dozens of protesters complained about marginalization. We don't have a problem with the citizens, not with the Tunisian government. Our problem lies with the UNHCR, which has forced us refugees to stay all this time, wasting years of our lives. There are refugees who have been in Tunisia for 4 or 7 years. The UNHCR completely marginalizes us, abuses us, and behaves in an inhumane way. Ahmed Abdullah Adam, a Sudanese refugee, explained why he was present. As they chanted and held placards, the demonstrators demanded immediate evacuation from Tunisia, where some have experienced ill treatment. Many hoped to rely on the UNHCR since they were granted a refugee status, but they claim their cases are not correctly examined. The international community and human rights organizations are urged to take immediate action. Every refugee who wants to make reasonable and legitimate claims to the UNHCR should contact the Tunisian Refugee Council, their partner in the Tunisian government, which is retaliating against us by delaying our files, moving us from one office to another, from the north of Tunisia to the south, so that we go back to Libya, Ahmed Abdullah Adam added. Both Tunisia and neighboring Libya have served as launch pads for migrants making bids to reach Europe. The Tunisian Forum for Economic and Social Rights says that over the first 3 quarters of last year, the Coast Guard intercepted 19,500 migrants attempting to cross the Mediterranean. Ethiopia Parliament votes to lift state of emergency early in conflict-ridden north. Ethiopia's parliament has voted for an early end to a 6-month state of emergency declared in November when rebellious Tigrayan forces had threatened to march on the capital, Addis Ababa. On Tuesday morning, the parliament's decision came after the cabinet last month suggested cutting short the state of emergency in light of improving security conditions in the country. After rapid advances in November, most of the rebellious forces have since retreated back to their region, Tigray, and there are signs of uncertain melt in relations between the opposing sides. Tuesday's votes was not a rubber stamp approval. Of the 312 lawmakers who attended the session, 63 opposed lifting the state of emergency, while 21 abstained from the vote. It was not immediately clear whether the state of emergency will be lifted on Tuesday directly following Parliament's vote. The war in Ethiopia flared up in November 2020 and is believed to have caused the deaths of tens of thousands of people and displaced of millions. Though the war has subsided in many places, notably within the Tigray and Amhara region, concerns remain in the northeastern Afar region. Meanwhile, in Nigeria, fuel scarcity bites hard. The Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, NMDPRA, says petrol with methanol quantities above Nigeria's specification was discovered in the supply chain. NMDPRA said this in a statement issued on Tuesday, confirming concerns by Nigerians and other stakeholders over the importation of petrol above Nigeria's grade to the market. Methanol is a regular additive in petrol and is usually blended in an acceptable quantity, the statement reads. The regulator added that the limited quantity of the impacted product had been isolated and withdrawn from the market, including the loaded trucks in transit, to ensure vehicular and equipment safety. The development caused long queues across Lagos and Abuja as many filling stations shut down services. In a now viral video online, a petrol attendant in Lagos complained how adulterated petrol supplied to the station damaged motorist cars and motorcycle engines. Our technical team, in conjunction with NNPC Limited and other industry stakeholders, will continue to monitor and ensure quality petroleum products are adequately supplied and distributed nationwide, the statement added. The source supplier has been identified and further commercial and appropriate action shall be taken by authority and NNPC Limited. The NNPC Limited and all oil marketing companies have been directed to sustain sufficient distribution of petrol in all retail outlets nationwide. Meanwhile, NNPC has intensified efforts at increasing the supply of petrol into the market in order to bridge any unforeseen supply gap. Finally, Nigeria hero Super Cop arrested in cocaine smuggling case. The police said on Monday, Abba Kyari, Nigeria's Super Cop, has been arrested over his alleged involvement in a cocaine smuggling cartel. Kyari and 4 other police officers were arrested for criminal conspiracy, discreditable, unethical and unprofessional conduct, official corruption and tampering with exhibits in a case of illicit drug trafficking involving a perpetual transnational drug cartel, a police statement said. He was suspended last August following an FBI indictment linking him to money launderer Ramon Abbas, also known as Hush Puppy, who is awaiting sentencing by a U.S. court for his role in cyber crimes. Earlier, Kyari was praised as Nigeria's most decorated cop and a deputy commissioner of police in charge of the Forces Intelligence Response Team (IRT) until his suspension. He was conferred with a Presidential Medal for Courage for Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari in 2016. The police statement stated the officers have been handed over to the NDLEA, adding that Kyari's involvement in the drug deal occurred while his suspension from service was subsisting. Spokesperson for the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, told a press conference in the capital, Abuja, that they strongly believe that Kyari is part of an international drug ring and was involved in a 25 kg cocaine deal. With the intelligence at our disposal, the agency believes strongly that DCP Kyari is a member of a drug cartel that operates the Brazil-Ethiopia-Nigeria illicit drug pipeline, and he needs to answer questions in an ongoing drug case in which he is the principal actor, said NDLEA's Director of Media and Advocacy, Femi Babafemi. Nigeria's Attorney General said, according to reports last week, that Kyari's extradition to the United States will be considered if required. The position now is that there are reasonable grounds for suspicion that have been considered from the perspective of prosecution, from the perspective of likely extradition if the need for so doing arises, said Abubakar Malami, who is also Nigeria's Justice Minister. This is all the news we have tonight. On the main news again, German Chancellor Scholz heads to Moscow in a mission to avert war. Politics in South Korea, campaigning for next president kicks off. The military in Myanmar committed war crimes in Karenni state. U.S. requests extradition of former Honduran President Hernandez. And 2 children killed in French Pyrenees explosion. That's the International News Desk. Thanks for watching. I am Lois Raki. From all of us here, it's good night.